The courtroom was built for order. Oak-panelled walls, a massive American flag draped behind the bench, and silence so thick it pressed on every chest. But today, it felt like a trap. Senator J.D. Vance sat at the defense table, not as a witness, not as a spectator, but as a man being questioned for conduct unbecoming of a sitting official after public remarks criticizing judicial activism in federal courts. The plaintiff, Judge Helen Whitmore, a long-time figure in progressive legal circles and vocal advocate for adaptive constitutional interpretation. She wasn't just sitting behind the bench. She was the one who had filed the complaint. The nation was watching. This wasn't just a procedural hearing. This was an ideological clash between two Americas. Vance, a rising national figure known for his unfiltered honesty and populist roots, had come under fire after a town hall where he said, "Some judges don't interpret law, they rewrite it based on Twitter trends." The clip went viral. The backlash was immediate. Within 48 hours, a formal hearing had been scheduled. "We'll see if he has the courage to say that in front of a judge," Whitmore told CNN. Now here they were, face to face. She adjusted her robe, he adjusted his tie. No cameras allowed, but the room was full of reporters with pens twitching and phones buzzing. She leaned forward. "Senator Vance, do you still stand by your statement that the judiciary is weaponizing ideology to shape law?" J.D. Vance didn't blink. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, voice calm, "and I brought the receipts." The gallery gasped. From his briefcase, Vance pulled out a thick folder labeled Federal Bench Social Media Audit. The judge narrowed her eyes. The first page? A compiled record of federal judges, including her, commenting on live legal cases while they were still active. It wasn't just bold, it was dangerous. Judge Helen Whitmore took a breath, measured, practiced, as she flipped through the thick audit J.D. Vance had just laid on the table. Her fingers paused. Page 3. Her own tweet from 11 months prior. "The Constitution must bend to modern justice." The courtroom was silent. Vance spoke, not loudly, but with surgical calm. "Respectfully, Your Honor, you tweeted that while presiding over a case involving religious liberty. And the ruling you issued the following week mirrored that exact phrase." A reporter in the back gasped. Whitmore leaned forward, visibly tense now. "Mr. Vance, are you accusing this court?" He raised a hand gently. "Not accusing, Your Honor. Citing, documenting. I didn't make these arguments on a podcast. I'm making them here where they belong, in court." He tapped the folder. "Judicial activism isn't a slogan. It's a documented pattern, and I brought the pattern." Then he leaned in, his voice dropping just enough for the gallery to lean closer. "There's a difference between interpreting the law and editing it in real time to impress a crowd. I don't debate memes. I defend the Constitution." The room erupted. The judge slammed her gavel. "Order." But it was too late. Dozens of reporters were already texting, tweeting, scribbling. "J.D. Vance, I don't debate memes. I defend the Constitution." Vance shocks judge with her own tweet. Courtroom stunned by evidence drop. Outside, the sidewalk was filling. Protesters, supporters, law students, even veterans. Some held signs, "Let judges judge, not tweet." Others, "Vance is right. We need real law, not hashtags." The story had escaped the courtroom, and it wasn't coming back. The courtroom doors had barely closed for recess when phones across the country lit up. Someone had leaked it. Not a rumor, not a quote. A full video clip, secretly recorded, of Judge Whitmore in chambers, days before the hearing. In the footage, she sat in front of a laptop, talking to someone off-screen. "This hearing isn't just about a statement," she said. "It's about putting that man back in his place." The phrase echoed like thunder. Putting that man back in his place. Within minutes, it was on YouTube, TikTok, and breaking news alerts. Hashtags exploded. Leaked courtroom clip. Activist judge. J.D. Vance was right. Back inside the building, a bailiff slipped a note to the bench. Judge Whitmore read it, froze for a beat, then called a closed-door conference. "Senator Vance," she said sternly, "will resume in 30 minutes." But her voice didn't carry the same weight now. Not after half the gallery had already seen the clip go viral. Vance sat calmly at the defense table. He didn't check his phone. Didn't flinch. He knew. This wasn't about winning the room anymore. This was about winning the record. In a side hallway, Whitmore's clerk frantically made calls. "Where's the source? Who leaked it? How did it get out?" The answer? A junior court employee, appalled at the private conversations he'd heard. Sent it to a legal watchdog group the night before. They held it, until they saw what happened in court that morning. As the judge re-entered the chamber, a reporter whispered, "The system just put itself on trial." Judge Whitmore's robe looked heavier now. She took her seat, composed, but the tightness around her eyes told the truth. The leak had changed everything. The gavel tapped once. "We will proceed," she said, "though I remind all present, this court remains a place of law." J.D. Vance stood, no folder this time, just his voice. "With respect, Your Honor, when judges start scripting narratives, not rulings, it becomes a spectacle on its own." A long pause. Whitmore folded her hands. "You believe your speech about judicial overreach is protected?" "I don't believe," Vance replied. "I know. The First Amendment wasn't designed to flatter power. It was designed to challenge it, and it wasn't meant to whisper. It was meant to warn." The opposing counsel stood, trying to break the rhythm. "Your Honor, this sounds like political theatre." "No," J.D. cut in. "This is civic survival." He walked to the front of the chamber, voice rising. "We've built a culture where the people we elect must bow before the people no one voted for. When a court becomes a tool to punish speech it doesn't like, it's no longer a courtroom. It's a censorship chamber." Whitmore's mouth opened, then shut. Even the stenographer paused, eyes wide. And in the gallery someone whispered, "That'll be on T-shirts by sunset." Outside, the clip hit 2 million views in 45 minutes. Cable news anchors stammered through live broadcasts. One guest said, "Vance just flipped the trial. Now it's the judge who's defending herself." The hearing wasn't over, but for the first time even the people inside the system knew the balance of power had shifted. The tension was now thick enough to touch. Every time J.D. Vance spoke, more phones vibrated in pockets. Live streams multiplied across platforms. The courthouse wasn't just a place anymore, it was a broadcast tower. But the real damage came from 1,200 miles away. That morning, a whistleblower from the Department of Justice leaked internal emails. Not speculation, not rumors, proof. Subject line, "Vance hearing strategy, contain optics." The body of the email read, "Ensure the senator is boxed into contempt territory." The objective is not legal precedent, it's narrative deterrence. Whitmore has our support. The email hit the internet like a thunderclap. Narrative deterrence. Within minutes, every major news network picked it up. DOJ email leak confirms political targeting of J.D. Vance. Not about justice, about containment. Narrative deterrence or judicial abuse. Back in the courtroom, Vance had just been asked if he would reconsider his public criticism of the judiciary. He didn't sit. He didn't flinch. He pointed directly to the gallery. "This system expected me to fold, but I don't answer to an email chain." Then, slowly, he pulled the printed DOJ email from his jacket pocket. "Your Honor, I ask that this be entered into the record." Judge Whitmore looked like she'd been slapped. She reached for her gavel, but paused, because in that moment she knew. She wasn't holding the gavel anymore. The American people were. Murmurs turned to roars outside the courthouse. J.D.'s line, "I don't answer to an email chain," went viral in under 20 minutes. Congressional leaders from both sides demanded an investigation. The moment Judge Whitmore tried to restore order, someone from the gallery stood up and yelled, "We don't want order, we want the truth." Security moved in, but the damage was done. The court had lost control, not through force, but through exposure. The courtroom was no longer neutral ground. It was a battlefield, but not of violence. A battle of narratives, receipts, and public trust. And J.D. Vance was winning it with every word. When court resumed that afternoon, Judge Whitmore's voice was different. Not shaky, but restrained. She tried to read from her prepared notes, but the moment felt like pretending it was still raining after a storm had passed. She looked at Vance, perhaps for the first time, not as a senator, but as something far more dangerous to her bench. A man the public trusted more than her. Then came the moment no one expected. Vance calmly walked to the microphone. He didn't speak first. He simply pressed play on a small voice recorder. Out came Whitmore's own voice, recorded from the leaked DOJ email session days prior. "We have to box him in. It's not about precedent, it's optics." The room snapped to attention. Judge Whitmore stared. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" J.D. said softly. "Or are you only concerned now that the people finally heard what power sounds like behind closed doors?" He turned to face the court. We were told this was a hearing about decorum, but it was a setup. And now that the curtain's fallen, we realize something simple. If judges can question our motives, we can question theirs. Whitmore slammed the gavel. You are dangerously close to contempt. JD didn't move. That's the second time you've said that, Your Honor, and it's still not true. Then he paused and delivered the line that would echo across America. Contempt isn't when a citizen speaks truth to power. Contempt is when power tries to silence the truth. The gallery didn't gasp this time. They stood, quietly, one by one. No applause, just witnesses, to a turning point. That night, a surprise statement dropped from a retired federal judge who had mentored Whitmore. He wrote, "No judge should fear scrutiny, and no court is immune to sunlight. What Senator Vance has done this week is nothing short of historic." By the next morning, the hearing had outgrown the courtroom. J.D. Vance's voice was being replayed in every corner of the country. Contempt isn't when a citizen speaks truth to power. Contempt is when power tries to silence the truth. It was a rallying cry. From coffee shops in Ohio to law schools in New York, people weren't just quoting the line, they were memorizing it. Inside the Judicial Ethics Committee, an emergency meeting was underway. 12 members, 1 vote. Behind closed doors, they debated not whether J.D. Vance should be punished, but whether Judge Helen Whitmore had weaponized her authority. That afternoon, as the hearing resumed, there was a shift in posture. Judge Whitmore entered slower. She didn't hold the gavel as high. A marshal handed her an envelope. She opened it, read the first line, blinked, then looked up at Vance. "Senator, this bench has just been informed that a motion has been submitted to open a formal inquiry into my conduct in this case." The room froze. J.D. said nothing, because he didn't need to. But then, in a twist no one expected, Vance leaned forward. "Your Honor, I won't celebrate this. Because this hearing was never about you personally. It was about what we let the system become." He paused. "You asked me on day one, do I believe the judiciary has been politicized? I answered yes." Then he added, "Now it's your turn." Whitmore sat back. For the first time in her career, she was being asked to testify, not as a judge, but as a participant. A clerk approached. "Ma'am, you've been placed under oath by your own review board." Outside, thousands had gathered with signs. "Courts aren't kingdoms. Truth has no robe. We saw what you tried to bury." The camera captured her face, calm on the surface, but the eyes said everything. She wasn't judging anymore. She was being judged. For the first time in her career, Judge Helen Whitmore wasn't seated above the court. She was seated within it. No robe, no gavel, just a chair, a table, and a microphone. The Judicial Review Board had invoked emergency oversight procedures, citing the leaked recording, the DOJ emails, and what they now called an abuse of institutional neutrality. And sitting across from her, Senator J.D. Vance, the man she had summoned, now watched as she answered questions, under oath. A committee member spoke firmly. "Judge Whitmore, were you aware that the Department of Justice coordinated a narrative-based strategy targeting Senator Vance's speech?" She hesitated, a full 7 seconds. Then finally, "Yes." Gasps from the gallery. Flashbulbs went off like lightning. Another question. "Did you consult with DOJ officials or their liaisons prior to initiating this hearing?" She swallowed. "I received informal guidance, yes." J.D. Vance leaned forward, hands folded. He didn't gloat, didn't blink, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about exposure, truth. A mirror held up to a broken institution, and now the cracks were visible to everyone. A final question echoed through the room. "Judge Whitmore, did you believe this hearing would silence Senator Vance?" She looked down, then slowly met the board member's eyes. "I thought it would reframe him." The air left the room. Reframe, not judge, not review, not uphold. Reframe. Outside, the crowd of thousands began to chant, "Reframe this. Reframe truth. Reframe the people." Inside, Vance stood, turned to the board and said, "Now you understand why the American people don't trust the process." And that's when the chairman of the review panel delivered a statement that would break headlines across the country. Effective immediately, this courtroom is suspended from further hearings until this matter is fully resolved. The system cannot police the people while refusing to police itself. Judge Whitmore stepped down, not weeks later, not after a long investigation. That same night, Her resignation letter was only 6 lines long, but one sentence burned through headlines like wildfire. No court should be used to intimidate public dissent. And just like that, the courtroom that had been designed to silence J.D. Vance had become his loudest microphone. Capitol Hill responded fast. A bipartisan committee was launched to investigate judicial activism and political interference in oversight proceedings. News anchors left and right agreed on one thing for the first time in years. This wasn't about partisanship. It was about truth fighting back. That evening, J.D. Vance gave a live, televised address. No teleprompter, just a lectern, an American flag, and the sound of a country waiting to hear what came next. This wasn't a victory, he said calmly. It was a reminder that when institutions drift too far from the people, eventually the people walk into the room, with facts, not fear, with voices, not violence, with courage, not corruption. He held up the same folder he had carried into court on day one, now bent, marked, stained by a week of war. This isn't just a binder. It's a boundary, the line between accountability and abuse. Social media exploded. This is our generation's moment. J.D. Vance just rewrote courtroom history. No more hiding behind robes. The hashtag Binder of Truth trended worldwide for 72 hours. And then came the moment everyone remembered. A journalist asked Vance from the press pit, "Would you do it again, Senator, knowing what it cost you?" He paused, looked straight into the camera, every single time. Because if we flinch here, we lose it everywhere. Weeks passed. The hearing faded from the news cycle, but not from memory. Because something strange happened in courtrooms across America. Law students quoted J.D. Vance's words during moot trials. Federal clerks printed out his statement. Contempt isn't when a citizen speaks truth to power, and taped it inside desk drawers. One even carved it into a classroom podium at Georgetown Law. And then, in the Library of Congress, a new exhibit appeared. In a simple glass case, a framed sketch. It showed J.D. Vance standing, binder in hand. Across from him, a judge looking down, not in power but in reflection. The plaque underneath read, "The day a citizen faced the bench, and the system blinked first." But the most lasting impact wasn't in courts or museums. It came in an email J.D. received one quiet evening from a young woman in rural Kentucky. "Dear Senator Vance, I watched the entire hearing from a folding chair in my dad's mechanic shop. I'm 19, never thought law or government was for people like me. But when I saw you say, 'The Constitution wasn't meant to whisper, it was meant to warn,' something changed. I applied to law school today, because I think it's time the people had a seat in that courtroom too." Vance printed the email, folded it gently, then he slid it into the back of that same worn binder. Because while the judge lost her gavel, the people gained a voice.